It's great to see you all today. My name is Heather Cimino. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful spring, finally, afternoon. And welcome to New Canaan Library. We have the distinct privilege and honor of welcoming Hall of Fame coach Jim Calhoun today. And he is here with celebrated journalist and his co-author of his memoir, Dom Amore. They are joining us to discuss their new book called More Than a Game. Thank you all for being a part of this special afternoon. Back in the 2000s, I was a reluctant UConn fan. I was drawn in because my husband, who's back there, hi Tom, is a huge fan, and he watched every single game he could. So over the years, I watched the team strengthen, and as the season progressed, you could see the unselfish play and the confidence and the teamwork that produced incredible wins. Now I see Coach was so successful because he nurtured his teams through building a culture of family, relationships, care for each other, and perseverance. These values help win basketball games, but more importantly, they prepare young people for life. Jim Calhoun is one of the most successful coaches in college basketball history. In his 40 years in the game, he has won 900 games. During his legendary 26 years at UConn, he had 629 victories and 3 national championships in 1999, 2004, and 2011. Throughout his life, Coach has prioritized deep personal relationships, and now, in his 80s, he remains a father figure to hundreds of his former players. He's also from Connecticut. He lives in Pomfret, if I'm saying that correctly. So also here, like I said, is Dom Amore, the co-author, and Dom is a 7-time Connecticut Sports Writer of the Year. He has been with the Hartford Courant since 1988. More Than a Game marks his second book, and he lives in Branford, Connecticut. So together, these two authors have created a memoir that transcends the basketball court. So we have some special guests today that I want to introduce and welcome, the New Canaan High School boys and girls basketball teams. You are our future stars in both sports and life, so thank you for coming. You guys want to stand up? There must be more of you out there. I saw some t-shirts. It was senior prom last night, so we'll give them an out. So just so you know how things are going to run today, Coach and Dom are going to have a conversation, and then when they're finished with that, there's going to be a Q&A. My colleagues and I will be running around with these microphones, so please wait until we get to you so everyone can hear your question. After that, Elm Street Books is in the back to sell books if you have not bought one already, and Jim and Dom will be in the back to personalize them if you wish, or if you brought your own copy, they can sign that and take pictures. So to the student athletes, if you wish, you can wait till after the signing and you can do a meet and greet with Coach and Dom. So please, let's give a massive welcome to Coach Jim Calhoun and Dom Amore. Thank you.
Days ago, I was out working on my Duncan. Oh, the mic is here, I'm sorry. I sat on a mic,
That tucked you on the other end.
I got a chance to goof up my leg, so. Thus the cane, thank God. And here we are, but I think the best way for us to start is this is now my home. You'd probably be shocked, but I'm from Boston. I believe in cars and parking it someplace, and maybe in Harvard Yard. My wife was born in Cambridge, and I kept telling her that's the closest she'll be to Harvard. It was in a bad moment, but I said it anyways. But Connecticut is where I've been since 1986. When I came, someone said it was a cow farm community, which is, I didn't think that was praise, by the way. I thought that was a little less than that. But that's where all the city schools realize something like UConn can grow and grow. And if you go on campus now, the greatest thing I feel in my years at UConn, and I'm still at UConn working with the president, it's just an incredible place, and it's become even more so. And we didn't come down here to tell you about how great UConn is or how wonderful Connecticut is, although it is. I could never understand, by the way, one thing when I first came here. People's inferiority complex at that, not Boston or New York. Yeah, I know, but you get room to breathe. and as an athlete or coach, you also had another great opportunity. You weren't number 13th on the list. Celtics, Bruins, Patriots, and I'll go on. And you kind of hit for an awful lot of the time, be it UConn certainly, and I know Yale for many years. It was a great academic school, but people forget it was a great football program at one time and produced some tremendous players. But we're thrilled to be down here. Driving on the highways down here is like being back in Boston. Never give a sucker an even break. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to turn it over to Dom, who's going to kind of set up how we kind of get together in this book. I've known Dom for a lot of years. I've been in Connecticut now for just about 40 years. And it is home. And I like it, but we're not going anyplace. We want to stay in Connecticut. And Dom is kind of, one of the reasons I got Dom, A, he's a terrific writer. B, his idea about trying to get my voice, not the words I use at the officials, I don't mean that stuff. What I mean much more of is kind of feel how I feel about coaching and kids. And he had the opportunity to go out and get 15, 20 guys, and without me being there, talk about their experience playing basketball at UConn or at Northeastern, where I coached previous to that, or a couple high school kids who went on to have great successes. And it kind of gives you a different insight, and thus the name more than the game. Dom?
Yeah, again, thank you all for coming. Great to see such a large crowd here. And, you know, we've done a few of these now, and, you know, my one job at these events is to introduce Coach Calhoun, and yet I never seem to be able to get to do it for some reason, right? It's like, that's the one thing I'm here to do. Also, I'm glad to see the New Canaan players here the night after the prom. You know, I've talked to Jim, Dan Hurley and Gino Oriema about offering scholarships to any of you guys who came here despite the prom, so your friends who slept in, they're out of luck, okay? You guys, you know, don't sue. I'm joking about that. You know, Jim and I, of course, got together about 3 years ago with the idea of doing this book. And Jim Jim reads a lot of books, and he had read a baseball book called The Wax Pack, where the author took a random pack of 80s baseball cards and looked at the 15 players on the cards and then went around the country doing sort of where are they now stories about how their lives turned out, the 15 random guys in the pack. And incidentally, one of those players I actually ran into yesterday, Lee Mazzilli, and I wasn't surprised that he was probably the least interesting of the bunch because he never says anything, right? You know, oh, what are you getting at? What are you doing? Who lived here, by the way, probably, yeah, I believe he moved back here. But Jim, we had the idea of taking that concept and turning it inside out and picking out 12 or 15, or I think we ended up with about 17 players or people that Jim coached and impacted, and who impacted him, and kind of telling those stories about how his relationships with those players evolved from his recruiting them to coaching them to all the way to today when many of them are now, you know, fathers themselves. You know, many of these players will say that they talk to Jim not about basketball, but or to reminisce, but to get his advice on being, a good husband and a good father, because that's what they admired so much about him when they played for him. So we set out about doing that, and we tried to pick out the big star players, the well-known players that people would want to read about for sure. Ray Allen, Kemba Walker, Rip Hamilton, Caron Butler, the guys who played in the NBA. But we also went about choosing lesser-known players. Players that Jim coached at Northeastern or at St. Joe's in his last coaching assignment, or even in high school, at Dedham High School. And there are chapters devoted to players who Jim coached and impacted then. And many people who've read the book say that they really enjoy those chapters more than the others, because they're reading about the people that they didn't know about. And I know one of Jim's favorite parts of the book was the afterword written by a former student manager at UConn who is now the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder, going for their second straight NBA championship. And Mark Daignault did a terrific job with that. So for those of you who have the book and have read it or are about to read it or about to purchase it today, I think you'll enjoy the fact that this is, as the title suggests, not a book about jump shots and free throws and fouls and officials and memories, but it's on the court, but it's a book about people. Because Jim is a guy who I've often said and written that he could pick a sport he knows nothing about, read a book about it cover to cover, and go out and coach it and make a team better, because he coaches people, not necessarily the games themselves, the X's and O's, although he's obviously was incredibly good at that too. So Jim, why don't you tell us what were some of the things that you hope that people take away from this book?
Yeah, first thing, I took away some moments, excuse me, of kids that I coached. And by the way, people always say to me, they aren't kids. Well, how many people here, either you were at one time, and now you're mother, father, uncle, friend of young people? They're kids in every sense of the word. And when they're really good, by the way, they think they're really good too. You can't be good. There's some kids who are very humble. You would not know Kemba Walker, who was cut, by the way, as a freshman in high school. They said he was too small. My question was, too small for what? He became, obviously, a great player, an all-star in the NBA, and now is after 12 years and $148 million, yeah, little guys can make it too. And my point being, it's about character. It's about perseverance. It's about being part of a team. It's contributing every single day to be the best you can become. I see some books and motivational books, but years and years ago, this goes back to Northeastern University where I coached. I started coaching in college when I was 28, and I was the youngest college coach then. When I won our last championship, I was the oldest college coach. So I was able to fight the time that comes with everybody, but fight it successfully for one thing. It's about relationships. You can't coach somebody you don't know or what's important to them. I had a kid, and if you know much about the Celtics, growing up in Boston, knew a lot about the Celtics. I tried out for the Celtics. I was cut by the Celtics. Bill Russell was the coach that year. And he kept this guy, some of you know basketball might remember the name, John Havlicek. God rest his soul. How'd that work out? Do you may know? Because I always tell Bill you made a mistake. But the most important thing is the idea of culture, of getting to know people and what's important to them. Reggie Lewis, who's one of the great players, never started a high school game. His high school team won 86 games in a row. They had all the best kids in Baltimore. He was a beautiful kid. He was a great player. The good thing, real good thing, was his high school coach didn't really recognize him as being a great player, so I was able to get him at Northeastern, not a higher level. He went on to become an all-star and captain of the Celtics, and unfortunately died of a heart attack at 27. But here's one of the things I remember about Reggie, and this is really important. One day he walked up to me and he had this real quiet, nice voice, and he'd say, Coach, can I talk to you? Reggie, you're averaging 22 points a game. You're going to class. You're a great kid. You like what I'm doing, Coach? Yeah. Well, could you do me a favor? You, man, of course I can do a favor. Can you stop yelling at me in front of the fellas? I said, Reg, it's the way I breathe. I can't speak to people without letting them hear it loud and clear. By the way, for the next 3 years, I didn't yell a lot at Reggie. I just said, keep going, Reg. But my point was, I knew he was very sensitive. He never wanted to be, have a spotlight on him, even though he was a spotlight player. And I think it's incredibly important. I would have written a guy I'm going to be with in, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks, Emeka Okafor, who's one of the great scholar athletes. He was just inducted into, obviously, the Basketball Hall of Fame at UConn. He also was just inducted into the Academic Hall of Fame at UConn. And he's really still upset about that. He graduated in 2.5 years with a 3.87. 87, that's a funny figure. Professor said he knew everything coming in, therefore he couldn't give him a 4.0. My point being, I said, Mick, the reason you're not in the book, you're too good. He's handsome. How do I know? My wife says it enough times. Secondly, he's brilliant. He is an amazing, amazing guy. So we tried to get a cross-section of high school kids, of different people, to let you know, you got to know who the person is, okay? And then the what he becomes or she becomes emerges afterwards. But you got to believe. You got to believe in them. And the only way you're going to believe in them is know what's important to them. I think whether it be parenting, teaching, any number of things. I mean, even, I shouldn't say Dom, but newspaper people, you know what they headline? Hits. What hits in the world of, my favorite world, by the way, I can barely use a phone. I use it a lot because it's the only one I have some control over. But it's changed. But I think you talk about the hits anytime at all and why we picked the people we did pick.
Yeah. Hits matter. That's why we do so many stories about ice cream parlors and so fewer stories about other things. In fact, I remember that last Final Four you were at with Brad Stevens, and I don't know who the other coaches were. They were younger coaches, right? And Jim said he felt like Fred McMurray in My Three Sons that day, right? For the younger kids, that was a situation comedy in the 60s. Jim, when we sat down to do this book, one of the things that kind of stood out was a gentleman named John Kowalowski who was aspiring for big things when you coached him at Dedham High School. And John, who came to a ceremony at St. Joe's to speak about Jim, and he told a story that Jim had never even heard from more than 50 years before. And that kind of that partially inspired the book, but inspired us to use that chapter. Jim, we'll talk about that a little bit and what you remember about that.
Well, John was a 6'6" athlete. He's a quarterback, naturally. He was a really good shooter in basketball, and he was a pitcher in baseball. Okay? And we're at a camp. Sam Jones, who's a great friend of mine, also a professional basketball player and a Hall of Famer, had a camp, and we took all the kids down to camp. And as camp started to break out, the kid, much like we're here, everybody would get out there. And Sam Jones is speaking about basketball and working hard. He's also speaking about what you should do with your life. Whatever you do it to the best of your ability, and do it every single day. Matter of fact, there's Sam Jones now. We got a guy from this school, from one of the high schools there, that's at this basketball camp, who's going to MIT. Anyways, John gets an award for, I think, an honors award for sportsmanship or something. And he runs up to me and then runs over to Sam Jones and says, "Where's the kid that's going to MIT?" Because John wanted to go to MIT. And Sam looks at him and says, "You are." He had never heard it before. I knew the athletic director very well. John, once again, I think he did very poorly on his SAT, somewhere in that 1,500. He slipped a little bit. And my point being, the day he got accepted, which was then, I think, early acceptance in November, John comes into my office teary-eyed and said, "You knew it all the time. What are you talking about? You're going to MIT, yeah. But you never told me. It wasn't necessary. You wanted to go there, and you had the ability. You went there." I never got over that moment, and Dom's right. The first time I ever heard the story that Sam had told him there's a kid here who's going to MIT. It really gets into the idea, when you're coaching, when you're helping others, you have a responsibility to get to know who they are. And John thought that for me to do this for him, when he talks about it to this day, oh, by the way, he's done okay. He graduated from MIT, then he ended up at Stanford, I think they call it, out west, and then Cal Berkeley as a professor, got his PhD. He's now number 3 at NASA. He did okay. And the point I'm making to you isn't just about John, it's by the fact that his parents were older, they didn't come really to games much, not because they didn't love their son, but I felt that if John wanted this and he was capable of doing this, why wouldn't I do everything that I could to help him? It had nothing to do with his jump shot. It was pretty good, by the way, that jump shot. It was nothing to do with anything except he was an incredibly bright kid who wanted to go to MIT and be something. And that story, that night, when John's looking at me, he's tearing up. I'll never forget that. Does he say Glenn Armstrong and I are the 2 most important people he knows? I said, you better make sure that you widen your sphere. But the point is, calling an athletic director, assistant coach, other people, exposing John to do the right things to get someplace, that's part of your job as a parent, as a friend, and certainly as a coach. They'll do anything for you, okay, except pass the ball sometime. Everybody wants to be the leading scorer. But you've got to get to them and have them understand that you're there for them. There's nothing more important in life as an uncle, aunt, mother, father, and particularly in the moment, a coach who they want to please. And I lost my dad at 15. My brother was 4. I did okay. My brother Bill was 4. He's just finishing up his cardiology career at Mass General. My 5 sisters, who were, if I missed a pass in football or when I was playing basketball and you said anything about me, you made a mistake. You made a bad mistake. And my point is, I was from a family that had to learn our circumstances and don't run away from it, but flourish from it. And here's the real reason I think that Dom will say this. What happened during that time, I went to work. All my friends are going off. I've got a full scholarship to UMass basketball, and I'm a stonecutter for 2 years. But during that time, Quincy's right there, there's all kinds of stones, and that's what I did. Positive, I put on 18 pounds, and I look different, okay? But the most important thing about it, I learned about my high school coach, the principal, my football coach, all the people who extended out to me and my 5 sisters and my brother as coaches, not handling jump shots or, touchdowns. They're handling people. And I made it a vow, and I mean this very, very honestly. When I look back upon this, that as a coach, I'd be there for them. When I say, for 2.5 hours, I'm going to have you hate me. And I do a pretty good job with that. Would you see me at practice? Yeah. Oh, by the way, for the other 21 and a half, I got your back. And I do everything humanly possible to make sure of it. So if someone wanted a simplistic way to talk about coaching, learn the game, obviously, have a feel for the game, be competitive, have great compassion, but know who your players are, and what they think. It's really nice what you think, but you probably haven't shot a competitive basketball or hit a baseball, or maybe you have, for real, in a long time, but you've done a lot of other things. There's no question. And I think you got to keep that in mind. The fact my sisters gathered around me knowing that I was going to have to turn down a full scholarship, knowing the fact that people in our town helped me so many different ways, it was incredible. And kind of really eventually evolves, looking back, what this book's all about.
Yeah, and I do want to get to some of your questions before, but so I will leave some time for that. So be thinking of questions so they could come around with the microphone. But just to add a little context to what Jim just told you, 50 years after John Kowalski, he coached a young man at St. Joe's named Sam Majak, who wanted very badly to become a dentist, and he was told that he probably didn't have the stuff to go through that program, and he should try to come up with something easier. And he went to St. Joe's, and Jim said, "You want to go to dental school? We're going to find out what it takes to get to dental school, and you're going to do it." And of course, today he is indeed. In fact, he's even beyond that, right? He's going to become a dentist. So that particular aspect of Jim being the guy that believes in you, maybe even before you believe in yourself, is kind of a theme that's run through, all of his entire career throughout that time. If this is what you want to do, you're going to do it. And Mark Daignault points out also that to go from a student manager without ever playing college basketball to get into coaching and end up coaching an NBA team is probably the most preposterous thing you can imagine. Yet when Mark was named coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder and he called Jim to say, you got the job, and Jim's answer was, "Of course you did. I knew you were going to get the job." And, Jim's words are very powerful, and he understands that power and uses them very, very wisely. Jim, as we've gone through this book, let's talk about Caron Butler a little bit in that story, because Caron, in fact, mentioned this on a podcast the other day, kind of told the stories that we told in this book. But let's talk about your experience with Caron Butler, because it's really, as Jim has called it, the great American story.
Yeah, he's one of the best kids I've ever had. He was 6'7", His hands looked like this, two of mine, and he could really play. He could really play. He had a little problem, didn't have a father. Mother worked from 12 to 8 at a factory, but still a great kid. So I really loved him as a player. So I had to go see him play. Well, I went to Racine, Wisconsin, which is a tougher town than Milwaukee in Wisconsin. By the way, I was the only guy there that looked like me. And a week before, another white guy came to the game, was shot and killed. Okay? So the game goes, and Karan's Karan. You know, he's dunking the ball and doing all the things that he did. And two things happened. I watched him. He finished the game, and all he did was salute. I had no idea. You couldn't talk to a kid at the game. And a guy named Bradley, who actually was a lieutenant, grabbed me. He said, you want that Butler boy, don't you? I said, oh, yeah, he's a terrific player. You know that what happened here a week ago. I said, yeah, but, you know, I was here to see a basketball game. You know, that's just who I am. And then the most amazing thing happened with Karan. Everybody at school was upset. He'd been in reform school for 2 years. All like stupid stuff. And that's what the first thing I said to him. You're a heck of a player, but you do a lot of stupid things. You know what stupid things are? Getting yourself in trouble, hanging around the wrong people. That lieutenant said to me, take him. He's a great kid. I took Karan Butler. Karan Butler did something, went to the NBA, became an all-NBA player. And by the way, one of the funny antidotes to this, when he was out trying to make a little money for mom and stuff, he worked at a Burger King. He bought 6 franchise Burger Kings, which I thought was one of the great things about. But he was just a great kid, and he was following the wrong people. The reason that he went to UConn, after all the major schools in the country, that's what that meant. That the fact that I came into a place that a lot of people would be afraid to know. I told them I'm not that smart to be afraid. Okay? When I get smart, I won't come here. But when he saw me walk in, it just said, like, I may follow this guy anywhere he goes, because he's not afraid of anything. Yeah. I'm afraid of a lot of things, but I wanted this player very badly. And you know, in Karan, by the way, I was the best man at his wedding. I've had the opportunity to do that at, I think now, 9 occasions. And by the way, if you haven't seen a UConn practice, or occasionally me on the sideline talking to the officials, I know I yell a little bit, but I'm just trying to help them. Christian charity will prevail. Remember that.
All right, so we've got about 25 minutes or so, and you know I could ask Jim more questions, but I think you guys would probably rather do that for me. So, who's got some questions for the coach, and we'll take them on.
Hi, Coach. Thank you so much for the time today. I grew up a UConn fan, so... Oh, sorry, there's one going on as well.
Someone asked a crazy question. Danny Hurley. Just so I won't be considered. When you were in the Big
Can you, Heather, can you have him say it?
Yeah.
We can't hear that back here.
Yeah, there was someone else in the back with the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Say the question again so everyone can hear you.
Okay. When you were coaching in the Big East, who was the craziest coach in the Big East?
Probably all of us in certain ways. Coaching 18 and 19-year-old kids, and by the way, I get hit all the time about the kids thing. They're not kids. You don't coach them. You don't coach them. But, at that time, and it was a glorious time, in my opinion, the Big East is still good. We're great. Danny's done a terrific job. But the guys we had a lot of characters. For example, no one intimidated officials like John Thompson. And if some of you remember games, John always had a towel to wipe the sweat off. He sweated a lot during the games. And when John took that towel and put it over his shoulder, because he's going to go after official, I turned to our assistant and said, we're screwed. Big John is going to go ask them. Louis was one of my favorite things. Louis, who knew me before when I coached at Northeastern, but certainly during the, I think we were together 12 years in the league, Louis would call me Irish. He didn't know me. Of course, I wasn't Italian. Maybe that's what it was, but he called me Irish. And if you think I talk fast, I still don't know what Louis said to me. And he's a wonderful, wonderful person, but he's a little bit nuts too. It's one of the things, the problem and greatness of basketball, the game itself, so many things are happening all at once. And which makes it a great game. And to limit anybody, I never liked Rick Pitino. No, I didn't. I didn't like him. He was coaching BU, and I was coaching Northeastern, true story, where he ran the river at the Mystic River and went run by each other. Never once do we speak over a 2-year period. By the way, he's a hell of a basketball coach. He can coach the game. He can get kids to do things. I didn't say I liked him. I said I had incredible respect for his, and if you wouldn't be man enough to admit that. PJ Callismo was my favorite person, and PJ was great with coaches, but boy, was he tough on kids. He was in practice particularly. But I think when you look around, all of us had our idiosyncrasies, I'm sure. As I said, Talik Brown, one of my favorite players, now an assistant coach at St. John's, with Rick Pitino. And he was offered the job. He's a part-time assistant at UConn by Rick Pitino. And I get a phone call one day, and Talik, coach, I got a job offer, a full-time. Unfortunately, it's with Rick Pitino. I said, well, why are you calling me? He's a Hall of Fame coach. He knows the game, and you'll learn. I'm not going to kiss him on the cheek. Yeah. And it's kind of funny. 2 years ago at the Big East, he said I've only had one true rival coaching. It was Jim Calhoun. We developed that thing where we didn't like each other. It happens. I don't want anybody to put their eyes down, because it's that person that you aren't particularly crazy about. But boy, can he coach basketball. He does.
Jim, we have one back here.
Hi, Jim. Thank you so much for taking the time and speaking to us today. I did have a couple of questions, wrote it down just so I don't mess it up. But most of the kids you coached, they were making a commitment to your program for 3 to 4 years. So naturally, you became invested in their success. Today, with NIL, the collegiate climate has changed, where a lot of these young athletes are essentially free agents after each season. Could you describe what you've seen at your time being around UConn during the past few years while this has been in effect? Is it a climate you could have coached in? And with so many young people in the room, what's your message to them when it comes to sticking with something after success doesn't initially happen?
Yeah, a guy I'm really, really friendly with is Tommy Izzo, and we beat them in '99 in Final Four. Terrific guy. Tough on his kids, by the way. Really tough. And he says every day, Jay Wright, terrific coach. I knew a month before he told everybody else he was leaving, because he believed in developing players, not only as players, basketball players, but as people. It's really hard. My question, and now we're adding more teams. What? I mean, the days of George Mason beating the UConn, which would beat Carolina and Wichita State that year to get to a Final Four, they're gone. You're going to see nothing but elite programs. I mean, I think we spent, I've heard, Danny doesn't have to tell me, nor do I ask, but we've probably spent 16, 17 million thus far on 17, 18-year-old kids. When I first got out of coaching, the NCAA wanted to know where I thought about the future of the game. And I said, I think you need to involve the kids who are providing the TV money, really, by playing the game. Maybe 15, 20,000 first year, 25 second year. But somewhere along the line, the NCAA went from being the bad guys, at least according to the coaches, to being crazy. This can't, in my opinion now, have a good ending. I don't know, how does it have a good ending? Do I mind paying kids? No. Full scholarships, you earned it, great. But, giving a kid, we have one kid's going to get $4 million. Now, I don't know about I forgot where I am, New Canaan. All right, so it's not much money. I got it. I'm in New Canaan, not in Braintree. I'm not in South Boston, where I grew up. But I'm saying it has all kinds, in my opinion, it has all kinds of dangers. Money will mean less to the kids, which in some ways is good. But it sets up a system where kids might go out, and a good friend of mine who heads up the FBI in New Haven, not for any reason, we're friends personally, but he said he worries about it because of betting. If a kid loses $20, $30, one thing. If he loses 500, I get all the money I need. Motivation. Now, Danny does a great job motivation-wise. Once again, I've already said, I like Danny, okay? He's crazy as a loon, okay? He's incredibly dedicated to his kids. The same Danny you see, I see a different Danny. He cares about the kids.
Another question? Oh, sorry.
No
ready?
problem at all.
Hi, Coach. Good to see you. The relationship with Gino over the years,
Yeah.
when you were both, winning all the time. There's a lot that, was written about it, and I believe, half of what you see, none of what you hear, all that. But I just would like to hear from you what your take is on the relationship.
Well, growing up in Southie, I'm obviously, my wife's McDevitt, Irish, and so on. And Gino happens to be Italian. It's, in all honesty, I mean, he's a magnificent coach. He certainly has done, in women's basketball particularly, obviously, he's done an incredible job. He and I just never really, we have different personalities, entirely different personalities. He's a good person, and he can really coach him. He really coaches him. I used to say this. He came in as the woman's coach, a male, okay? And then some of you might remember a group called Boys to Men? Yeah, thank God. Thank God you guys are here. Young kids saying, huh? Well, you know, he coached women like he was coaching guys. And that was a difference maker. And I've always said, you know what? He may not be my favorite person all the time, but the guy knows what he's doing. And he's tough on them. And he does a great job basketball-wise. But, you know, you're not going to like everybody. We're entirely, you know, I was 10 years older. His kids were playing Little League. Mine were in college. There's plenty of reasons. And we just never, just because we coach similar sports, doesn't mean we have to be buds.
Okay, we got one back here.
But he can coach.
It's a 7-time sports writer of the year. I don't know if I would have had the courage to ask that question. So I kudos for there.
Okay, we've got one here.
Hey, Coach, I'm a friar by degree, so I can't be a fan, but I have great respect for your program.
I'm sorry, what was the first thing you said?
I'm a friar by degree from Providence.
Oh, bless you, Lord. Well, I'm sorry. By the way,
So, my question.
I understand that one of the great advantages that you have at Providence is you could take your high school books right to Providence, no change. I'm just saying. You save all that money. It's a great education because you don't have to buy any new books. It's wonderful.
You got to get through Western Civ, though. I'll tell you that. It's not easy.
You got it.
So, by the way, thanks for Ryan Gomes.
I want you to know this. I'm going to tell you the truth.
You know, you're never going to get your question off now.
No, I want to ask my question.
Ryan Gomes is one of the nicest kids I know, number one. I recruited 2 players that year, okay? Mecca Okafor, who was Rookie of the Year, national, obviously in the honor roll, and a kid named Ben Gordon, who played 13 years in the league. Ryan, at that time, was not doing well academically. He's one of the nicest kids you're ever going to meet, and if I could do it over again, I'd find a way to get him in my program.
So,
On the 19th, no, I get there. On the 19th, when we have our golf tournament, Ryan's coming to play golf with us.
So my question, the Big East was certainly an important part of your career. Do you think that the rumors of UConn leaving the Big East, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a newspaper man, so he's going to have to shut his ears. But I think we should be running away. For 4 days, and no one. For 26 years, I went to Madison Square Garden and coached those games and loved every minute of it. I've coached a lot of games at Madison Square Garden, NIT, preseason, all that stuff. But we've outgrown the Big East, except for Rick, really. I didn't say, he knows I didn't say St. John's. I said, Rick, can they be, it's not in the same game. We only had 3 teams go to the NCAA tournament this year. In 11, we had 12 teams go to the tournament. It's not the same. So I would love to see us, and it's very difficult to do, have us go to, if I had a preference, I'd want us to go to the ACC. I think these Stanford and, Florida State are a joke. I just don't think it's any way. I love rivalries. My dad's best friend graduated from Harvard. My dad graduated from the Merchant Marine Academy, and they're both engineers together. Every Harvard-Yale game we went to, and it was incredible. That's gone, that happens, I understand that. But now we're forcing, in many, many ways, to get it to be like, who's that team we're playing? I know the name, but but do they have game? I don't know. What we're doing now in college athletics, it still is the kids want to win. I mean, I watched them play, okay? I've watched them give everything they could possibly have. And Danny did a great job with our center when he came from Michigan, and he could be a first-round draft choice this year just by his work ethic. So some good stuff is still going on. What's getting in the way is administrations of more money. I mean, if you saw the money, you know what the Final Four grosses? Last year, 1.6 billion. And to me, that's a heavy price to pay to watch two teams. The reason the Big East, I'm glad you mentioned it, even though you went to Providence, the Big East was the best. From Rolly. You know how Rolly used to get on the sidelines, get all mad? I always, and he's looking at me as something, saying something. I wanted to say, what would he do if someone let him go?
All right, we have a question here.
Before you arrived, my UConn highlight was Don Perno stealing the ball from Bill Bradley. Obviously, you changed UConn basketball forever. Second highlight was when you, your first or second year, went to the NIT, and I think you won that.
We beat Ohio State, yeah. Thank you.
And of course, Duke, beating Duke in the your first championship. That was, frankly, a surprise to me. I had thought you probably didn't have a chance.
And I appreciate your confidence. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to tape the game, and then I thought, no, I'll never want to watch a loss. And then at halftime, I go, oh, we could win this. And I ran over and set the VCR. But anyway, getting to my question, what are your thoughts on Ricky Moore's son being currently recruited?
He's a terrific player, by the way. It's really going to be funny because Ricky was here as an assistant coach. And in and around the time that Danny came, Ricky left. And I just don't know if that has any factor. I talked to Ricky, but it's not my business. If Danny asked me to say something about Danny, I would, obviously. But I don't want to get in the mix of that kind of thing. It's not a good thing. But his son can flat out play. He's really a good player.
We've got one back
Incidentally,
here.
the only UConn coach who has a winning record against Rick Pitino is Dom Perno, by the way. That's a little known fact. Ben, is he laughing? Is he okay with that? Okay, just check for me. Okay.
Hi. You alluded to my question at the outset when you said that UConn's been transformed. I was wondering if, to what extent, your success and the success of the other UConn programs has kind of contributed to the sort of Doug Flutie BC ascendancy. How do you divide? Where's the mix between academic and administration commitment and athletic success?
Well, Duke's not a bad school. Just because we hate him. Mike's one of my best friends, by the way. Mike and I had very similar backgrounds. No father, a lot of different things. But there's great institutions out throughout America that are great athletically and great academically. Right now, we're kind of like the country. We're in chaos athletically, in college athletics. I mean, the world's in chaos, right? Everybody's moving someplace, it seems to me, and not necessarily in the right direction. For me not to be able to go to a Harvard-Yale game, years ago, and only not everybody here would understand this, how about a Holy Cross Boston College basketball game? People forgot it. One time Holy Cross was number one in the country in basketball in the early 50s, and they had great players come there. I just don't like the direction we're going because it's monetarily based. I asked somebody the other day, and this was being facetious. I said, you know, one thing you don't read in the paper anymore, what's that? Do kids ever get ineligible anymore? I'm not gonna go, you know, up to our provost and talk about that or, or anything else. But it just seems maybe we're putting the emphasis. What's happened at UConn? Someone asked me, what's the most prideful thing I did at UConn? Most prideful thing I've done at UConn, okay, was make it be meaningful and make people know how good we are. Connecticut's a great state. I mean, there is no way possible. I can't even get around UConn anymore a little bit just because so many brand new buildings. When I first had the old field house, okay, and we'd be practicing basketball, and all of a sudden they were going to have a 100-meter sprint, the gun would go off. 3/4 of my kids would hit the floor, to give you an idea. We are right now, my opinion, okay, and even though I do work for the president, I don't give her advice on what we should do with everything. But on a basis, all we are is we're a small Big Ten school. And we really are. Academically, you start looking to see where we are academically in a lot of subject matters. And someone mentioned it before. Jimmy Penn is probably the best baseball coach in America. He's been offered every place for a lot more money, okay? Mike Kavanaugh in hockey. Gino, I know they always want to go to Tennessee. The best women's basketball coach ever is Gino. I mean, he's not even close. He's that good. So we have Danny. Danny's clearly one of the best coaches in the country. I think you're going to love the new football coach. We're doing things. We're building. We're doing great things. And when I first come in, the line I remember an athletic director saying to me, and he was a good man, but they happened to catch me going to see a recruit, and I was going over the Thames Bridge. Well, you know it. If you saw me drive, you know the rest of the story is true. And I was a little late for the interview, and the kid was 7 feet. And so his name was Keith, matter of fact. So I'm going, you know, I couldn't have been going more than 75. Okay? And so the athletic director gets told that I'm driving a state car at 75 miles an hour. And I turned to him and said the only logical thing I could think of saying, yeah, but he was 7 feet. He could block shots. and my point to us now, I don't think my wife got upset one time after we won the national championship, our first, and because a cop stopped me and said, "Sir, roll down your window." "Coach, I'm sorry, I pulled you over." And of course, she said in her, I think it's the Catholic education, 12 years of Catholic school, I think did it to her. But she said, "That's disgusting," when the cop left. By the way, 2 weeks later, she got stopped. Showed the license. "Are you related to him?" I'm his wife. It was okay then. There's not a man in this room that doesn't understand exactly what I'm saying.
Jim, can we squeeze in one more
Sure.
quick one?
That's where they throw the book at me when they pull me.
Coach,
Yes.
who was the most interesting player you coached, and where is he today?
Well, they're all interested in their own way, but my job is to get who they are out of them, and I work very hard at it. You know, when I got cut by the Celtics, so I went to grad school in psych. So someone asked me, did it help me coach? Well, I'll tell you how it helped me coach. I knew why they were doing it. I just couldn't stop them from doing it. Like some of you people at the prom last night, if you know what I'm talking about. And my point being simply, is that I think that for everybody, there's always a reason we all do things. And with us, there's a reason.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank you all for coming, and great questions, great back and forth. Loved it, enjoyed it, enjoyed being down here in New Canaan. And so we've got some time. We're going to be selling some books, signing some books, and we're going to set up somewhere, right? And you guys will be able to come by and say hello to the coach. So again, thank you all for coming, and
thank you very, very much.
Enjoy this beautiful weather.